Good morning, everyone. So this video is going to span over the course of, I believe, 4 days. I started it on Monday with a little bit of footage for another video and then rolled that footage into yet another video, and now here we are 4 days later. It's a topic that is really important to me and a really big part of how we put food up or what we do here. And so I just wanted to share what my pantry looks like. That's basically all it is. I'll do a video later on how I put food up and the different techniques I use for dehydrating everything and for long-term storage. But because we are just starting the new garden season and I'm not to the point of actually dehydrating anything yet, this is what you get. I'm going to start with, I am standing on a stool because the pantry shelves are quite tall in my kitchen, and I am not a terribly tall person. I have dehydrated mushrooms, and I do not grow my own mushrooms. I do buy them either at the farmer's market, natural grocers, Aldi's, or Walmart. And I usually watch for them when they are on sale. I can either throw them into the pot of stew or chili or whatever I'm making as whole, or I can put them in the coffee grinder and make them into a powder, which I do with a lot of the vegetables that I dehydrate, and then make my own soup seasoning. So as you can see, they're nice to look at. They retain their color, their shape. They're really quite tasty. And it's not hard to dehydrate them at all. And this was done early last year. So these are almost a year old. And they were just mushrooms from Walmart. To show you the dehydrated jalapenos, I have several jars of dehydrated jalapenos on my shelf, as you will see as we're going along. So sometimes they do make it to the point where they have turned red because I just don't get them off the plant in time. But you can see I just slice them, dehydrate them with their seeds in, so it adds extra flavor. Again, they grind up really well for adding flavor to soups and stews or chili, which is what I did earlier this week. If I wanted to use them in a sandwich, I could throw them in some hot water to go ahead and soften up. They'll reconstitute a little bit for salsas as well. And this is also dehydrated jalapenos. I have what's left of my saladette tomatoes. So I usually do fairly thick slices. I keep the skin and the seeds. They do tend to really curl up. It's kind of hard to see, but this was a just a slice, and as they dehydrate, they do tend to curl up sometimes. But you can see I have kept the skin, the seeds. They smell wonderful. They grind up really well for using in soups and stews or chilies. Okay, let's put that back. Let's see what else we have. This is the last of the cherry tomatoes from last season. Now with the cherries, I usually just cut them in half and put the cut side down on the dehydrator tray and let them go through the process. What I end up with are these nice little discs with the skin and the seeds. Have a wonderful flavor, and again, we can grind them up, we can throw them in something and they'll reconstitute, or we'll just eat them as is. So let's see what else we have in here. Okay, this is some more mushrooms. More mushrooms. Right. Here are some bell peppers that are from 2 years ago. Okay. And these are bell peppers that I grew, and I just sliced them, put them on the dehydrator tray, And you end up with these nice thin little ribbons. They were actual slices. You can see they have a little bit of elasticity to them. Throw them in, you know, your hot soup, chili, stew. Grind them up for added flavor to things, which is usually what I do with the bell peppers. I'll put them in the coffee grinder, grind it down to a nice powder, and then add it in with some onions, maybe some mushrooms, tomatoes, squash, even some celery, and it makes a really nice base if I'm making a vegetarian soup. Kame, are you supposed to be on the counter? Get down, get down. Naughty cat. Not bad. Here's the jalapenos. Okay, so obviously I like mushrooms. I do have some traditionally canned peppers, but I usually don't can them. My preferred method is dehydrating. All right, we have some more tomatoes and more tomatoes. And then just some empty jars back there. So let's see. That's it for that. With some squash. So this is zucchini that I grew 3 years ago. And this is what's left of it. I don't have a lot of luck with growing squash, or, you know, I don't get a lot off of it, I should say, before the squash bugs get to it. You can see I had some different sizes. So pretty when they're dehydrated. It reminds me of, you know, like rounds off a tree. They're just really pretty. You can see the difference in size, but usually just slice it, put it on the tray, and halfway through the dehydrating process I will flip them and then put them in a jar when they're all done. And squash is a favorite for making soup mixes with. It grinds up really well into a fine powder and really does add a lot of flavor. Okay, this is eggplant that I grew 2 years ago. Okay, eggplant is another one that's really fun to dehydrate. Adds a wonderful flavor to soup stock I'm making. I usually cut the eggplant into fairly thick rounds and then I quarter them. I don't seed it, I don't take the skin off. Like the squash, I will come back and turn them midway. A quart-sized jar will hold 3 medium eggplant in it, which you would not be able to get if you were canning it. It would not retain the flavor and texture that you get with dehydration. And this is just regular globe eggplant, just nice big purple fruit that is most commonly grown. Nothing spectacular about it. Some more. So here's some onion that is from last year that I grew. And I have a little bit of onion left hanging up here. My kitchen got quite warm this winter, and so some of it has sprouted. So when I open it up, it reminds me of like opening up a can of jerky French fried onion. I slice them just like I would if I was cutting up an onion. The rings separate during the dehydration process. This one has retained a little bit. You can see it's still on there. I normally do not need to turn them. I just put them on the trays and they dehydrate really nice. It stores well, it grinds up well in the coffee grinder, reconstitute well, and they have a fantastic flavor. And I actually have just munched on these as is because I love onions. I think this is mostly beans and nuts. Some more tomatoes. Those are saladettes. This is carrot. And that may seem kind of an odd thing to dehydrate. And I do them both shredded and sliced or chunked, but I'll show you what the shredded looks like. And carrot is one of those that reconstitutes so beautifully that It tastes and feels just like a fresh carrot. So here's what's left of the pepperoncinis that I grew last year. Okay, now just like the jalapeno peppers, I slice them, leave all the seeds in, put them on the tray, and they can be added into anything for flavor, or just eaten as a snack. They are really tasty. I wish you guys could smell these jars as I'm opening them. It is making me really hungry. So here's a fun one. This is what's left, and it's going to get used today, so I'll get to show you in tomorrow's video how it works. So I will often end up with odds and ends that won't fill up a full jar, or I may want to make a soup mix and not go through and divide everything out. And that's what this is. It is one of the soup mixes that I've put together that has celery, carrots, corn, and broccoli in it. I think that's it, yeah. So I'll try and pull out some individual pieces and show you how they all look when they are dehydrated. So you can see the broccoli looks like broccoli. A little bit of corn there, some carrot, and celery. So for the broccoli, I usually cut it into smaller pieces. I'll cut off the little florets, and then I'll divide the larger ones up to make more manageable pieces. Some bananas. I think everyone has probably had dehydrated bananas or even dehydrated bananas. And when I see the organic ones on sale at Aldi's, I go ahead and buy as much as my dehydrators can handle and put them up. And we can grind that up and throw it into breads, eat them as snacks, put them in smoothies. I mean, it's just so many ways that you can use dehydrated bananas. I have banana peppers, which just like all the other peppers, slice them, put them on the tray, seeds and all, and they reconstitute beautifully. As you can see, we have lots of strawberries. I do the same thing. I do grow strawberries, but not enough to put up a significant amount. We usually eat them fresh. So I'll watch at the farmer's market or the stores and buy large batches of them and then dehydrate them. These are the pear tomatoes. I have yellow pear tomatoes. And as you can see, I don't slice them in half the thick way, I slice them in half the long way. So then we end up with these pretty little shapes, seeds and skin, everything on. The process for reconstituting is just like all the other tomatoes. Alright, so here is Millionaire eggplant. That was dehydrated last year. There's not a whole lot left of it. This is a smaller eggplant. They tend to grow long and skinny. So like I do with squash, on this eggplant, I go ahead and just slice them in fairly thick rounds. And you can see we end up with some kind of smaller pieces. This is about the bulk of what the body of the eggplant is. And it's hard to tell with the camera. It's making it look like it's really dark, but it does retain its purple hue. It just isn't showing up very well. Or just grind it up and throw it in for your seasoning, your soups and stews. I have some herbs. So what we have is parsley and purple basil, and I pick the leaves off the plants, lay them on the dehydrating trays, and they dehydrate pretty quick on the dehydrating trays in the evening, and by the next morning they are completely done, and then I can throw them into the jars. Let's talk about this soup mix. Now this is a little bit different. I'll pull it down and I'll explain. This is actually a video that I should do all on its own. So this was a bit of an experiment, and I'll explain what it was. So everything goes in the dehydrator here at my house, so I can see if it dehydrates well, and then if it reconstitutes well, and what the flavor is, the consistency, you know, how long it lasts. And I wanted to see if I could take canned vegetables like this and dehydrate it and turn it into this 14.5 ounce can. And this does not have asparagus in it. This just happens to be the only actual can of vegetables I have currently. Peas, green beans, corn, carrots, and potatoes in here. I put them on the dehydration tray. By the next day, I ended up with this beautiful soup mix. I actually had several jars of this. Each one had 5 different vegetables in it. You can pour the entire quart jar into a large stock pot to make a vegetable soup, or you can shake up the quart jar and have everything mixed in together and then just portion out like a cup or half a cup depending on what your recipe or your soup calls for. Last but not least of what I'm going to show you today is my dehydrated pickles. You might be wondering, why would somebody go through the effort to dehydrate pickles? Well, I wanted to see if I could. I had ended up with a 5-gallon bucket of hamburger dill slices. I experimented a little bit. Portioned out a very small amount into a Ziploc bag and put it in another Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer. And I'll tell you that when we thawed them back out, they were perfectly fine. So you can freeze dill pickles. But then the rest of them went into the dehydrator. And it was a week-long process. I had all of my dehydrators going. It didn't take long to dehydrate them, but it was a lot of pickles to go through. So they are pretty thin. I didn't do anything to them. I didn't rinse them. I put them on the trays and let them drain a little bit, and then just stacked the trays up and dehydrated it. They are really thin. They are really good. And you can crumble it up for like dill pickle seasoning, or if you're making a sandwich, just put some dried dill pickles on it and stack all your vegetables and your, you know, your hamburger, your griller patty, and they're wonderful. So they're salty and they have that nice dill flavor to them. If like food textures and stuff bother you, you may not want to eat them dry like this. You may want to, you know, like reconstitute them or something. But for me, I like it just as it is. Great thing to have in our bags for like when we go hiking or we're traveling. So there you have it, dehydrated pickles. So everyone, thank you for hanging out with me today. It was fun showing off my pantry and talking a little bit about how I put up food. I cannot wait for this gardening season to start so then I can go ahead and give some hands-on tutorials on how I grow, prep, and dehydrate things. Until tomorrow, have a good day.